Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and this is Eddie Marcus one more time. I am so glad that you stopped on this post, and I'm going to feed this post, and I hope you get a full meal. You know, during these particular times, our nation is going through some crisis situations. We just got through going through an impeachment process where you found an individual who had violated the rules and regulations as it pertains to the nation and the Constitution, and yet the Senate decided that they would like to acquiesce on their power and put it in the hands of the administration. And so we see that some of the same things that happened in the beginning of time are still happening in the present time. And also, right now, after that, we have this coronavirus that's coming around. You got a lot of people panicking, not knowing exactly what to do. I was just thinking about not too long ago, I was looking at some social media excerpts from Venezuela where things were so tight and people going to the grocery stores, the shelves were empty. People start fighting and struggling over this and that, and our store shelves are getting empty just as they were in Venezuela. And I'm thinking about, hey, do you think those times could be coming here? I mean, right now, the shelves are just being emptied, but who says what's going to happen in a month or two from now, depending on what's going on. Some trying times. I'd ought to also take a moment to mention that in 1984, I believe, or 83, maybe 84, I was traveling around the country because I had been given an instruction as a called out one to service to God, the invisible one. I acknowledged that challenge, and I was sent around the world to learn, around the country to learn the truth about the people in relationship to where God's perspective is. And I was also informed that I should give the message to the people who would listen that they were on the path to hell. And all I had to do was to keep a record of daily events. And when I came back after months and I read it, it indicated truly that the people that I came in contact with indicated that they were so far away from God that they were on the path to hell, even though many of them would swear that they were upstanding and righteous. But the mission was to prove to me, give me the evidence so I can stand before you, the American people, and say to you with clarity and certainty that I know exactly what I'm talking about. So I was telling you then that America was on the path to hell, and I believe in 2015 there was a man walked out and attacked the president of the United States by saying he was a birther, that he wasn't born in this country. There was a moment of division. Stood up back there and started dividing. It could have been before then, but at least by 2015, this president was born someplace else. He's not an American. Well, that started it. That got his attention. Then we remember the day he came down that escalator and he started talking about Mexicans and criminals and druggists and murderers and talked about all dark-skinned people or people of color from shithole countries. I mean, he walked out. What was this? What did he project when he walked out? I come to what? I come to conquer. I come to destroy. I come to unite and make America great again. I think the other descriptive one for that was called the devil. Well, anyway, make a long story short, he conquered. He walked down those escalators talking about hate and all that ugly stuff and became president of the United States. When they tried to impeach him, the Senate says, no way, Jose, we sticking with you. Like a third of the host of the angels told Lucifer, we're sticking with you. But they got kicked out of heaven. And so, ladies and gentlemen, when you see Trump sitting on the throne, he conquered. With all that hate and division, he conquered. People still love him. What does that say about America? 84, you're on the path to hell. Now you got the devil's top representative sitting on the throne, and you got the Senate supporting him. Now you got this group called the Democratic Party, who together with the Republican Party brought you to this point that you got such a one as Donald Trump on the throne. And now the Democrats walking behind and hoping that you will think that they are not as bad as Trump and are a better choice. And so that you would run to these polls and vote for this here, what you figure is a better choice than Trump. Now, most of you people are in this country thinking that. You don't realize that those think tanks, the people who run this world, people who run this country and this world, thought of that. They thought of that. They thought about the fact that Trump was just a test to see how far you had gone down the rabbit hole. And they got it up there to see if you've gone down there enough to vote for him again, put him back in office again. They love that. But if you haven't, they give you a choice of Biden. And I say they because all of a sudden, all the news media sources, all the attention started going to Biden. It stopped going to Sanders. You remember one time it was all going to Sanders? It stopped going to Sanders, all going to Biden. So they made their choices, their selections, Trump and Biden. Now you all wound up by who gonna beat Trump. That's to keep you off the real score. It's not about beating Trump. It's about, let me tell you what it's about. That is what this message is about today. What did the last three Republican presidents or the last three Democratic presidents do to solve the problems of the nation? Problems like unemployment, poverty, crime, violence, lying and cheating, stealing, terror, bigotry and hatred, racism and war, lack of sufficient education and health care, women selling their bodies, and men and women selling their souls. Obama, 8 years. Clinton, 8 years. Jimmy Carter, 4 years. What is that? 20 years of Democratic rule. Did any of these problems get solved? Not a one. Then 3 years of Trump presently. 8 years of Bush 2. 4 years of Bush 1. Total of 15 years. Did anything get solved in relationship to these problems that I just mentioned? Not a single one. Now what we have is 35 years. 35 years. And none of these social problems got resolved. But let's take it back a little bit further than that. Let's go back from the 50s, back from the Eisenhower days. Now you got 8 years of Eisenhower that is being counted. 8 years of Reagan. 3 years of Ford. 5 years of Nixon. For a total of 24 years, Republican presidents. 24 years. Then you got Johnson, 5 years. Kennedy, 3 years. 8 years of Democratic rule. Nothing happened. Now, since 1950 up to this current date, we have had 39 years of Republican presidential rule. 39 years, ladies and gentlemen. Many of you are not that old. 39 years old. Dr. King died when he was 39 years old, with Malcolm X as well. 39 years of Republican rule. And none of these problems that I just mentioned up there have been solved. Okay? 28 years of Democratic rule. President. 28 years. This, a grand total of 67 years of Republican and Democratic rule. And for 67 years of these rulerships, you've been hearing over and over and over again that they promised to deliver the basic things that you have always wanted. And instead of getting that, you got something else that involved a lot of unemployment and poverty and crime and bigotry and lying and cheating and stealing and war. That's what you got. 67 years. Now I ask you, ladies and gentlemen of America, I ask you, what kind of difference would another Republican or another Democrat, what kind of a difference would a president from either of these sources, what would it make? We got 67 years of evidence that it doesn't make any kind of difference. And it proved beyond doubt that this is a distraction. You either vote for Trump or you get distracted by voting for Biden to keep your mind off of what you've been praying for. But I've come before you to mention it to you. You see, ladies and gentlemen, there was a time when strong women fought as hard as any man for freedom. Still, at the same time, there were women and mothers teaching their sons to cower down to the white masters. They didn't mean no harm. They did this to save lives. And you think that was a good thing. But God requires that we and all of his children will forfeit life as we know it before we submit to man as master. Now I want you to check that out real good now. God would require, and it would be, any of God's children would gleefully let loose what we call life before we bow down and say, yes, sir, master, to a Donald Trump, or to any of these 67 years of Republicans and Democratic rule. I propose God's plan as one that worked and lived for the devil, who worked and lived for evil and Satan. Well, all humans do that. Acknowledge it. I learned the truth, and I admit it. The entire human experience as we engage is to establish that there is no God. That's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. There is no God. And knocked it out of the schools. They don't want any public disposition of it. No God. Say that God, there was no God that made the earth. There was a big bang. Humans weren't created. They evolved. And so now, you got someone who doesn't believe in God as president, and you got part of the church on the right side, evangelicals and fundamentalists and preachers, supporting that perspective. So, it is true that the entire human experience, as we engage, is to establish that there is no God. Now, such propaganda has had the effect of reducing the faith of those that were once true believers now to that of supporting the anti-God system, yet donate to the philanthropic causes, and they go to church as their signature of honoring God. Tricked, purely tricked. Their daily lives, and when I say their daily lives, I mean within the systems of the world that are designed to maintain these systems, activity in it every day involves denying God. And by doing this, this is the foundation for hell. Let me ask you, is there any church or men of God that you know of are proclaiming and advocating that God and God's ways are superior to that of any other. Or they might say that. But is there any amongst you that's teaching and living according to that teaching? That under no circumstances can a human being honor God and man at the same time. I think that has to do with no man can serve two masters. You might have heard of that before. In honoring man, you help build his world. In honoring God, you help build God's world. Now, I ask you again, is there anyone in America advising the creation and establishment of as in heaven, so on earth? Well, there is one that's advocating for God's way for the human experience on earth, as if in heaven. At least one, though each of us have accepted the ways of men by choice. I now ask you to consider God's ways and make it your choice. May I remind you, my friends, of God, of the earth, and you. All physical existence is a result of an invisible power known as God. The earth has been created for many reasons, of which one is to be the dwelling place for human beings to live. To facilitate a divine expression, all resources possibly necessary for any reasons that humans may devise have been preserved here, in the earth, on the earth, above the earth, seen and unseen. Humans made to live on earth are each created differently, yet each have the same requirements for survival. Requirements that have been prepared for all by the shelving in the earth. And most important of all, each human is expected to participate in self-preservation. Thus, each has a part of a gift necessary for the process indwelling within them. With that gift comes joy that only God can give. Now, I hope you pay some attention to me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not preaching to you. I'm just trying to share some information with you. With that gift comes joy that only God can give. You have a nation, if you follow this basic principle, of joyous workers engaging in producing all the goods, all the services necessary to meet the needs, to meet the wants, to meet the desires of the people. Allowing the people to live in peace, to be prosperous, to live free with joy of life and the fulfillment of their dreams. Now, adding millions or even perhaps to billions of workers to the workforce allows for an abundance necessary that every person is satisfied. This includes food and clothing, shelter and education, and health care, and all other amenities such as infrastructure, transportation, and vacation, plenty of it, etc., etc. Now, this is part of God's plan for humans on earth. It represents God, His creation, and harmony of existence, and human choice aligned with life. It represents God, you can't see, His creation, all of the earth, and us, human beings, living and existing in harmony. And it is basically humans' choice and it is aligned with life. With this, we have no debt, no money, no fees, no penalties, no fines, no taxes, no IRS, but you do have carte blanche. That means basically you have access to all of the things that are created by the hands of man at your disposal, whereby the result of all of you engaging yourselves in it make all of you owners of it. And you can access it at will. Now, but the opposite approach, man trying to achieve the same as God without God, the results are you're going to have some that have and others that don't. Remember, you are better than they are. You deserve better than they are. You are special. You are superior. You remember that? Well, out of that, you're going to have also the other side effects. Have nots mean poverty. It means crime and violence. It means cheating and stealing, terror and bigotry, hatred and racism, war and education, and a lack of health care. And isn't it amazing that these signs started in the beginning? And this is why you ended up with the haves and the have-nots. And so the haves started this practice, and having gotten as much as they could possibly get, they never ceased. They still doing it. See the tax break that Donald Trump just gave when he came into office, all of the big corporations. Now he's talking about, because of this situation with coronavirus, other big institutions get covered. He has said one thing about you, the people. Talking about money. That's how they want to use money. That's how they distribute money to maintain their power over we, the people. This message is to tell you that we can claim that power back. Now, adding, billions and millions of workers to the force. Look how that opens the door for you not to have to work 40 hours a week. Maybe a day a week or 2 days a week. Maybe you'll be struggling trying to work because you have so much time to play with. And all of it, ladies and gentlemen, is no pain and suffering. That stuff is eliminated. Now, what are we saying? We're saying that the choice is yours. November this year, you're going to go to the polls, and many of you are going to vote for the most evil that's ever been perpetrated on this country in your lifetime. You're going to be voting for Republican because you think that it's the best. There are going to be those of you who are going to go to the polls, and you don't care what anybody says. You're going to vote for Democrat because you know nothing else. You got faith in nothing else. There are going to be those of you who have heard this message and who just identify with it, and you're going to go to the polls and you're going to vote for none of the above. You're going to go to a blank space and you're going to write in God. Now, I can predict how many people are going to write in God. You say, don't say that. You might underscore it. And by your words, you're going to call in just a few. My words have nothing to do with what you're going to do. It's just telling prophecy. That is, that you are not going to vote for God. The truth of the matter, ladies and gentlemen, is you've been tricked so hard till what your faith is in God, it has no faith at all. You have no faith in God. All of that stuff that you've been told was an expression. Getting up, falling over benches, throwing your hands up in the air. Sure, God has been good to you. Nobody's trying to deny that. God has always been good to you. Always. And many of you know it. And you don't mind acknowledging that God has been good to you. That's not the question. The question is, how good have you been for God? What have you done for God? What have you're part of the human race. What have you done for the human race? Or have you just been here sucking it all up for yourself? Big as some fat house, sucking it all up for yourself. And to hell with everything else. What good is your faith if all you do is go to church, give a little money out to causes that help the people who are hurting? This is permitted. In fact, the state, the law, even permits you to do that. You can write that little money off. Why do they do that? Because it has tied your hands, put handcuffs on your feet, and you're doing nothing for God. Nothing. Going to church is doing nothing for God. Donate that money, talking about some helping the poor, is doing nothing for God. You know what you're doing? On the one hand, you are permitting poverty to exist. Permitting it. And then going over there giving a handout, talking about when the hunger come over here, give them a piece of bread. Don't you see how fake that is? You might not see it, God does. And we, as Americans, are experiencing the fruit of that kind of seed. We are going through. We better choose and make the right choice. It is yours. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.